Today, on St. Petersburg News, we analyze the major themes within the novels of The Adventure of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. The theme of lies and deception is evident throughout the novel as Huck Finn tells and experiences lies with other characters in the novel. Huck's incidents with lies throughout the novel highlight an important question: when is it okay to lie? As he continues on his journey, the difference between lying for one's morals and deceiving out of spite becomes apparent, as some of the lies are good and some of them are morally deceptive. By presenting lies, Mark Twain comments on society's flaws through Huck's reactions as he develops due to the lies he and others tell. As he develops, he finds out when lying is considered positive or negative. Today we have experts on Mark Twain's novel to provide us insight on the deeper meaning behind his message. These recreations are accurate as witnesses testify. Check them out.
Hey Jim, have I been asleeping? Oh my, Huck, you was alive. You ain't dead, you ain't drowned. You was back again, thank goodness, honey. What makes you talk so wild? How does I talk wild? How's? You've been talking as if I've been coming back and all that stuff. Where's I going? Well, Huck, you look me in the eye. Hain't you been gone? What do you mean, ain't I been gone? Where'd I go? Well, didn't the line cut loose from the raft and left you in the canoe behind the fog? What fog? Why, the fog. We was both mixed up in it, and we was both lost, and we couldn't find each other. Well, I busted up on one of these islands and almost drowned. Ain't it so? Well, I ain't seen no fogs, no islands, no troubles, no nothing. Man, we was just sitting here talking, and I fell asleep, I reckon. Well, I reckon I was dreaming. Yeah, tell me about it. Well, that's all well interpreted, Jim, but what does it stand for? What does it stand for? Well, my heart was most broke when I thought you was gone, and I didn't care no more what came of me or the raft. And when I woke up, you was fine, and I was so thankful. But all you were thinking about was fooling poor old Jim.
Really changes your perspective on the situation. What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Louise. In the fog scene in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Huck lies in order to play a prank on Jim. Jim's reaction to Huck's lie shocks Huck, as Huck did not expect for his small lie to evolve into a serious situation. An innocent joke can harm others, as people react differently in various situations. Huck realizes that Jim is hurt by his joke, as Jim was genuinely worried about Huck's well-being. Jim explains to Huck that while Jim was worried for his life, Huck only thought how he could deceive and hurt Jim. Huck's apology to Jim signifies a major development in the evolution of Huck's morality. Huck begins to view Jim as a friend worthy of his sympathy and guilt, which leads to the momentous decision that Huck later makes not to give Jim up to the slave traders. Huck's lie about Jim's dream harshly contrasts with his lie to the slave traders. Huck's intent when fooling Jim is purely to amuse himself and invoke a reaction out of Jim. In contrast, Huck lies to the slave traders with the intent of protecting his friend Jim. Through this comparison, Twain introduces the idea that the nature of the lie is purely dependent on the intent behind the lie, a concept which remains constant and evident throughout the book. Huck begins to understand that his own ideals are more important than the racist moral standards that society has taught him, causing him to morally mature. Through Huck and Jim, Mark Twain is able to present how society has deceitful morals. While Jim and Huck are aboard the raft, the freedom and tranquility of the river gives way to the deceit, greed, and prejudice of the towns lying on the shore of the river. Although many members of society blindly follow and accept established morals of others, Huck's separation from society allows him to question the values being pushed onto him. As Jim and Huck continue on their journey down the river, they realize that they enjoy their life upon the raft far more than on the shore. Through lying to Jim, Huck is able to learn that lies do not always have a positive effect, and later carefully considers when he should and should not lie.
Really changes the meaning on lies and deception laced within the novel. Moving on to a new scene. Roll the film. We better glide out of here before it gets out of hand.
What? And not steal the rest of the property? March up like a pestle and fools and leave $8,000 or $9,000 to be sitting around?
The bag of gold is enough. I'm not taking any more from these orphans.
Why, how you talk? Just steal the money and that's it. They ain't got to suffer.
Alright, but I still think it's foolish to stay.
This is another one that I'm letting him rob her money of. And when she got through, they all just laid themselves out and made me feel at home, and now I was amongst friends. I feel so low and down, and I mean I have made up my mind, and I have that money for them or I bust.
Tensions are clearly rising on this part of the novel. What do you think, Janet?
Right. The king and the duke lie to the Wilkes family in order to steal their money. Through his sympathy for Mary Jane and her sisters, Huck recognizes the cruelty of the king and the duke's lies to the Wilkes, as the Wilkes have recently gone through the tragedy of their father's death and have been nothing but kind and welcoming to Huck. Throughout Huck's travels in the raft, honesty, kindness, and equality prevailed. However, whenever Huck touched shore, he encountered the deceit and greed of the rural southern United States. When Huck lands on the shore, he is met with the cruelty of the townspeople in the royal nonsuch scene, as well as the lies and deceiving actions of the king and the duke. Huck demonstrates his understanding that the king and the duke are lying for the wrong reasons, as deceiving the Wilkes family will cause the Wilkes physical and emotional harm. Huck's decision to steal the money away from the duke and the king and give it back to its rightful owner demonstrates that Huck has developed to the point that he will take action to stand up for his beliefs. Unlike Huck's passiveness during the royal nonsuch scene, as he allows the king and the duke to deceive the townspeople, Huck's interference in the Wilkes scene demonstrates Twain's belief that humanity should take an active approach in upholding their own morals. Through Huck's sympathetic influence on his decision-making, Twain comments that the intent of the lie truly determines the morality of the lie. For instance, Huck's development from a person who lies for amusement to a person with a tendency to protect those who are kind to him emphasizes the idea that lying to help others is necessary, whereas lying to purely benefit oneself while ignoring the well-being of others is cruel. Although society tries to instill its own moral code in Huck, Huck's reaction and eventual betrayal of the king and the duke presents the importance of advocating one's own personal morality, even at the expense of betraying the societal expectations of others.
Thank you so much, Janet, for providing your insight on this legendary novel. Moving on, we have a special guest to give us a new perspective on the deeper meaning. Take it away, Barbara.
Thank you, Louise. Now let's welcome our new guest, James M. Cox. Mr. Cox, we hear you have an interesting point of view to contribute to our discussion. Would you please share it with us?
Thanks for having me, Barbara. And of course, Jim is the conscience of the novel, the spiritual yardstick by which all men are measured. Jim serves the purpose of setting a moral standard. During the description of Jim's remorse over hitting his deaf daughter, the empathy that Jim feels for his daughter becomes evident. Through juxtaposing Jim's remorse with the Duke and King's willingness to mock sign language and pretend to be deaf as a part of their scam to steal money, Twain demonstrates the cruelty and immorality of scams of the Duke and the King. In this sense, Jim functions to emphasize the corrupt values of society through his establishment of a moral normality.
Do you think that Jim was also used to expose growth and morality?
Absolutely. Okay. Jim represents a level of morality that Huck can aspire to reach. As the two fugitives move down the river, Huck's whole moral sense grows out of and revolves around the presence of Jim, and his ability to measure up signifies his worth. Huck's whole sense of wrong, his feeling of guilt, are products of his intimate association with Jim. His companionship with the runaway slave makes possible his moral growth.
Wow, so you believe that each character in the book is compared to Jim, who represents a moral normality. Therefore, Jim functions to emphasize the morality of each character's decision of when to deceive. By looking at Jim, we can interpret what Twain believes about when lies are necessary and beneficial versus when they are purely malicious. Also, Twain uses Jim to point out the flaws of the corrupt, deceitful society and illustrate the values that Twain believes that society should strive for. Interesting perspective. Thank you for your contributions, Mr. Cox. Well, that's all we have for you tonight, folks. Thank you for tuning in to tonight's show, and remember, stay classy.